Um, Hello, Khairul, Rusydi,
Hey everyone.
everyone. Most of the people that are joining in are watching the stream, so it is what it is. Welcome everyone to another 70. This is the 80th, I think. This is the 80th episode of Techbiz series. My name is Edwin Najogun, and I am your host for today. I'm the country director for Echo Innovation Center. Today is going to be fantastic. I just met someone that I from a company that I think I have known for a while, and I'm surprised that um, I'm happy that we're able to get him to come on on our show today to really explain talk to us about the South Asian market, it's something that's fantastic, and I really look forward to hearing what he has to say because. Here in the Economic Center, we are big about collaborating and creating connections between, local and international bodies. So this is something that's fantastic, and I hope that we are the big ones we that we are big on innovation. We are going to pay a lot of attention, and we're going to really learn a lot from Cairo today. All right, so just to recap, the Innovation Center is an innovation development company that's big on enterprise development and employability, and this is one of our programs. We have several programs. If you want to talk to us, please follow us on our social media handles from Instagram to LinkedIn to Facebook. Now we're on Twitter back, thank God. Someone's going to post all the links in the chats, and please join our Telegram community. It's a fantastic community. We have conversations there every other day. It's really really fantastic because it's where all of us who have what do you call it similar interests in startups, we get to come together and have a conversation, and I'm hoping that Rushdi will get to post this get us to there so we can actually have talks and debates once in a while, because it's always funny for when things get what's heated in there. All right, so I think they asked someone to post the links, and they will be posting the links very soon. So now, really, really, why South Asian markets? Was asked. You do realize that they're the next frontier. Several investments have been, I think, about 13 in fintech, about 13% or 40% of all investment in Southern Asia. I'm not sure about the number, but what I do know is that they are making serious waves in innovation, in policy. They are leading the way and showing us how to do these things, and it's really good for us to know exactly what's happening there, see how we can model, how we can partner, how we can match, how we can even import some of these solutions down here, to understand the climate, even to see if we can even export some of what we are doing here over there. So that's the reason why we have it here. And today we have with us Rushdi Khairul.
Hey everyone.
He says his house is at the intersection between tech, youth development, and entrepreneurship education, which means he lives there. That's where he's been born and bred. That's what he does, right? He's a previous enterprise Singapore scholar at ESG. Recently considered for for SMEs in the domain of human capital development and management systems. He has all previously served on the boards of various youth development organizations, including Scape Advisory and the Young Seekers. Most notably, used this served on the SG Youth Action Panel with the Singapore Ministry of Culture, Community and Youth, as well as the Alliance for Action with the Ministry of Manpower. Rushdie currently leads Reactor, that's www.reactor school, Reactor.school. As a co-founder and CEO, Reactor School works with 200 plus high schools and universities in the APAC region to help students turn their ideas into companies, which is very fantastic, right? And thereafter, Reactor Ventures, which I'm sure is his investment arm, helps to syndicate investments in student-led startups with an average ticket size of $100,000 per team. Is this Singaporean dollars or just US dollars?
Singapore dollars, which is
Or Singapore
slightly,
dollars?
yeah,
Oh,
Singapore dollars. Yeah.
it's more valuable than dollars, or it's less valuable?
No, so it's around 78,000 US dollars.
For one.
For, yeah, 78,000 US dollars per startup, thereabouts.
Oh, okay. For part
Yeah,
also, that's significant.
yeah.
All right, cool. So I'm very pleased to have Khairul here with us, and I would like to open giving the floor. He'll be speaking to us for the next 45 minutes. Afterwards, we'll be open to taking your questions, and we'll take it from there. So, Khairul, welcome.
Thank you so much, Edwin. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're calling
Good
from.
evening.
Yeah, it's currently 12
Oh
midnight
yeah,
here in Singapore.
it depends where you're streaming from, so it
Yeah.
could be really any of
So
those
thank
two.
you so much, right, to all our friends who are calling in. Shout out to, I think we've got Nathaniel, we have Yemi, we've got Mayoa, and the rest of our audience who's tuning in on YouTube, on Facebook, so on and so forth. So just allow me to just share my screen right now, because I do have a set of slides, and don't worry, you guys can download this at the end of our session today. So here we are. Right, introduction to the Southeast Asian startup ecosystem. So at any point in time, if you've got any questions, feel free to drop it in the chat. If I'm going too fast, if I'm going too slow, let me know as well, right? Or if the internet's a bit choppy, keep me posted. So yeah, just a bit of myself. If you want to get in touch with me, it's Rusydi at reactor.school. As what Edwin previously mentioned, I used to be with Enterprise Singapore. So that's the statutory board under the Ministry for Trade and Industry that oversees startup development here in Singapore. I've also worked with small and medium enterprises to help them grow in terms of their systems, as well as to venture overseas. And as Edwin has mentioned, I've been working in the youth development space for quite a while right now, serving on various boards that looks at helping students to develop themselves in various different types of careers. So that's a bit about myself, right? Feel free to reach out to me anytime, either on LinkedIn or via email. This is a quick overview about what Reactor does. So we're split into 3 different divisions. So Reactor School is the outfit that works with the high schools and the universities. So we have around 200 of them on board right now. These are universities where we run the incubation centers on campus, right? We work with the student founders. We help them to raise their first 50,000 or 100,000 Singapore dollars, in terms of developing their startups. And then we have something called the Reactor Incubator, which is a talent incubator. And there are 3 different pathways that we help our students, right? So the first pathway are students who want to be founders. The second pathway are students who want to be early employees. So maybe employee number 5 at Uber, employee number 15 at Spotify. And the third pathway are students who want to be investment analysts at venture capital firms, right? So we work with a lot of Gen Zs and millennials across Southeast Asia. And then finally, the part which I'm very excited about is Reactor Ventures. So this is where we syndicate a deal, which means that we work with other early stage investors to fill up the entire round. So usually we don't lead the round. We find another lead investor because the startups are basically incubated by us, and we don't want to be biased in the types of valuation that we give to the startup. So it has to be validated by an external party. So that's why we don't lead the round. Right, so there are 63 student-led startups. So all our startups are all students plus minus 2 years of graduation. Most of them are 25 to 26 years of age, but we support students all the way up till the age of 30. Right, so when they apply to us, they've got to be 29 and below. 7 of them have already raised a seed round. They raised from venture capital firms like Cocoon Capital, Quest Ventures, 500 startups, or now 500 Global, if you guys are familiar with those names. But most of them are operating in Southeast Asia. So I traveled around previously. I travel around a lot in Southeast Asia. Not sure when I'll be traveling again. Maybe 2027. We'll know. Who knows, right? And then yeah, so we work with a lot of early stage venture capital firms.
Yeah.
Yeah, across the region. Right. So what we'll be talking about today, right? I'll be talking about, for those of us who are new to startups, what exactly is a startup and what's the definition that we use in Singapore in terms of the Singapore government. I'll be sharing about the Southeast Asian ecosystem, who are some of the key players, and then we'll talk a bit about trends, right, that I've noticed, whether it's in agri-tech, health tech, etc. And then I will talk about fundraising trends as well. So for those of you who are looking to either to expand in Singapore or the region, or if you're looking to raise from investors in Singapore, what are some of the things that you should look out for? All right, so if we're good to go, let's begin, right? What exactly is a startup and how do we go about building one? Right, so this is a question that we asked our 12-year-olds in the national examination, right? So we gave them these triangles, and then we asked them to fill in the table, right? So in figure number 5, how many white triangles and how many gray triangles are there? So if you guys want to take a stab, you can put your answers in the chat. I'm just going to give you 8 seconds to do that. Yes, no? All right.
Wait, like give us a minute, right? Come on.
Give you a minute. Let's see whether we've got anyone with the right answer. In the
Uh,
meantime,
I'm
we've got
thinking.
Ayang
I'm think.
Bayi,
Wait a
Isaiah,
minute. Wait a minute.
Abdul.
I'm
Yeah.
thinking. I'm thinking. I would go with. Oh boy. Wait a minute. 3, 10. Jesus. Wow. Why is it so hard? Okay. 3.
Okay, so we've got someone.
Wait. I'm almost there. I'm almost there. I'm almost there. Wait. Wait. Don't rush me. Uh, 13. 13. Sorry. There will be. Um, there will be. I give up. I give up, man.
Okay,
I
so
give up.
so you see, right?
Too
There
much
are
work.
different ways, right,
Oh,
in which
someone just. Oh, the people put answers. Someone said 13 and 14, but they didn't
yeah.
say which one is white or which one is white and which one is gray, which is not fair because I mean I
Okay,
could still the answer.
all right. So we've got 13, we've got 14. Alimi said 6. Okay, so there are different methods, right? You can do about doing it. Some people would come up with an algebraic expression. Other people would draw it out, right? So you've got to draw 4, and then actually you notice that from number 3 to number 4, you added one more row at the bottom. So for figure number
Yeah,
5, you'll add one row. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, plus another 2 more by the corners. So those will be white, right? The other way
yeah,
to look at this is to turn it into an algebraic expression. So this is part A, right? And then the question next is basically, how do I find the total number of gray and white triangles for figure 250? Right? And this is an actual question that we asked the 12 years old in Singapore in our national examination. So you can imagine some of the students were panicking. I can't draw, 250 triangles. That's
yeah. You have to
impossible,
do the
right?
formula for it.
Yeah. So, this is one of the questions that we were trying to get our students to think about, right? Which is, how do I come up with a clever solution that may not actually be, what we intended for? We kind of throw them off into a situation where they've got to learn, unlearn some stuff and try different ways. There's no one right method to solve this particular question. And that to me really is what entrepreneurship education is about. So when you go to school, you're taught you use something called causal reasoning. 1 plus 1 equals to blank, right? So there are laws and frameworks that you have to follow. Plus, minus, times, divide. There's always a right answer. But when you graduate into this thing called life, you use a different type of reasoning called effectual reasoning. So it's blank plus blank equals to 1. There's no one right answer. There are multiple ways to get there. You know where you want to be, but you don't always have to choose one particular method. And this is the change in mindset that we're trying to get students to make, right? How do I go from causal reasoning to effectual reasoning? And how do I become comfortable, right, with uncertainty? So that's really what entrepreneurship is all about. So usually when we run our programs, right, it could be something like this. It could be instructor led, right, where students learn about these concepts. They have to build a startup. They've got to pitch, right, and you will have a capstone activity where the students, as young as 14, for example, will put together an investor pitch deck, and they will pitch to actual investors or other entrepreneurs or people from the industry, right? And throughout this entire process is to get them to be comfortable with uncertainty. What if I don't know the answers? How do I go about validating my assumptions, right? And that to us is what entrepreneurship education is. So we call it EntreEd. So we've built a framework around this where we look at what are some of the values, what are some of the characteristics that define what a good entrepreneur is. And we built this around the 5 elements. So they are polar opposites, right? On one end, you want an entrepreneur who has that grit and resilience, that bias to action, that fire in them. At the other opposite end, you want this entrepreneur to have adaptability and fluid intelligence. Fluid intelligence is where they take knowledge from one area and apply it to something completely different, right? So polar opposites, adaptable, but at the same time, you want them to have that stubbornness to them as well. And then the other polar opposite is between air and earth, right? You want them to be idealistic and visionary, but at the same time, they've got to be realistic. They've got to know what their limitations are, whether it's in terms of resources or funds or time, right? They still have to be grounded and disciplined. But what we found is that right in that center, right, we want our students to be autodidactic. And this is a very big word, but what it means is that you want the students to be able to learn whatever it is they need to learn without the need of a formal teacher, right? So they're self-directed learners. And entrepreneurs are really good at this because if I have to run a digital marketing campaign, I'm not going to wait for someone to tell me, try out MailChimp or try out a social media campaign. If I need to code something, I'm going to pick up Python or JavaScript. I'm not going to wait for someone to tell me to do that. I'm going to go out there and learn whatever it is that I need to learn. And we bring this to the high schools that we work with, right? So this is one of the groups that we work with called Khairul. They built a platform for students in rural areas to learn about career guidance, right? So it's an all-girls team, right? We help them to hack it out, and they built really nice mock-ups, right, over 3 days, right? So all this is done within 3 days, and they've got to test this out. So after they built the mock-ups, they've got to go to students, they've got to pitch it to them, they've got to get feedback, so on and so forth. And you also have my friend, so Wei Jie, who's the guy who's second from the left. He's the founder of an outfit called Forward Coffee. And he built a social enterprise where he helps students with disabilities to get gainful employment, right? So they first started out with a kiosk that looks like this. And I think right now they've got like 5 or 6 stores where he deploys, people with disabilities to be gainfully employed, right? And this is a great form of social enterprise where you look at social mobility and giving opportunities to people. Yeah, so it's not just about tech startups, right? It's also about social enterprises, social movements, communities that create value for society. Yeah, so this is him and some of his, students that he's trained, right, and deployed in his various stores. Right, so previously we had this, phrase, right, cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. But I think as we move on into the 21st and 22nd century, we're defined by what we build, right? And it's going to be constructo ergo sum. I build, therefore I am. So as entrepreneurs, we are based or judged or, evaluated based on the projects that we build or the startups that we build or the communities that we build or the value that we provide. And I think that's a great paradigm shift. It's no longer just about thinking and ephemeral ideas. It's about, doing something that is tangible for society. Right, and our background is that we believe that the world's biggest problem is that there are not enough young people solving the world's biggest problems, and that's why we do what we do. Right, we train students in high schools and universities to start startups that create positive, lasting change for society and for humanity. So, if you look at the definition of a startup, and I'm going to borrow this from Eric Ries, who's the author of the Lean Startup, he states that a startup is a human institution designed to bring about something new under conditions of extreme uncertainty. And that's what we want the students to figure out, like what is this uncertainty and how do I deal with it in a healthy way? And if you look at the definition of how we define a small and medium enterprise or an SME, right, in Singapore, we look technically at an organization that has less than 200 staff, less than $100 million in annual turnover, and at least 30% local shareholding, which means that at least 30% of the company is owned by a Singaporean or a permanent resident of Singapore. So this is the criteria for accessing any of the public grants or any of the support schemes that the Singapore government gives out, right? And then a subset of this is that we're looking at high-tech startups. So for us, it's all of the above. And on top of that, we're looking at companies that have been in operations for less than 5 years. But more importantly, we're looking at companies that have the ability to scale fast and create jobs for locals or local residents. So this definition is always in a state of flux. Sometimes you make some changes in terms of policy, but at least in the context of Singapore, that's what we're looking at. Right, and then when we're building a startup, you kind of look at it at 3 different stages. So the first stage is where you're going to put in structure, right? Can I find a problem that is painful enough, right, and is faced by enough people who are willing and able to pay for it. And I put in place some structure, steps 1, 2, 3, to solve that problem. And then I look at repeatability, right? Can I do this with customer A? Can I do the exact same steps with customer B? Are there enough customers who demand this problem to be solved? And then eventually you move on to scalability, right? What's that marginal effort that I need to serve 10, 100, 10,000, 1 million customers? Is it a linear business, which means that for every additional customer, I need an additional piece of resource? Or am I building something scalable, right? Where I need, lesser resource as the numbers increase exponentially. So that's the holy grail, right? About what venture capital firms are looking for. They're looking for companies which are scalable, right? Because that's where you can increase your impact, right? By more than proportionate in terms of the resource that you put in. So the reason why I share this is because when we work with our students, the inspiration behind your startup idea can come from various sources. Your startup journey is not going to be linear. So what do I mean by this? So some students, they'll go through college, they'll work on a startup idea, and if they're lucky enough, they get traction, and they work on that startup right after graduating, right? So typically, they might have taken part in a hackathon, taken part in some sort of event, and what we've noticed is that these student founders typically work on business to consumer ideas, right? So trying to solve their own problem. And then you've got another group of students who, might take an internship while they're currently in college, and then they leave, and then they work in a tech-related firm, right? Maybe they work in one of the large tech companies like Google or Amazon or Netflix, and then halfway through, right, they realize that, hey, I found this problem that I want to work on, and this problem could be, found at the workplace, or they might have met another friend who has an idea, and after 2 or 3 years of building up some savings, they leave their job, and then they move on to their startup idea full time. And then the third pathway or archetype that we've seen are students who work on a startup idea, try to run it after graduating, it fails after 3 months, after 6 months. They go back to the workforce, build up some savings, and then work on their second idea or their third idea or fourth idea, which could be an iteration of their previous idea, right? So what we've noticed
Yeah.
is that the journey is not linear. Sometimes they oscillate. You may not necessarily be a founder straight away, and that's okay, right? It's also all right to be an employee first, find a problem that you really want to solve, and then decide to start a startup of your own. Yeah, Edwin, anything you wanna say or comment at this stage?
Me?
Yeah,
No, you were just talking about the stage startup start founder. No, I didn't actually fail. Kind of like I cashed out too early. Let me put it like that. So, so failure is kind of like subjective, depending on how you
sure.
look at it. Look at it from the fact that I actually exited, then yeah, success. But when I look at it from now and I see how much senior others are raising, I'm like, okay, I will step way too early. But then if you're just talking about me now, so I was like, wow, okay, you just call my name out.
Yeah, feel free to chip in, guys, if anyone here has any questions or any thoughts about this. Right. So the whole
Yeah.
point is your startup journey is not linear, right? You could bounce, across different types of roles. Right. So in Singapore, I just wanted to share this, right? What we define as a social enterprise, business entities that have clear social goals. There's clear management intent. So management says we're going to commit maybe at least 20% of our resources to solve a social goal, and they allocate this, right? So you could be a social enterprise, for example. You have any of these characteristics. So we have an entity in Singapore called RAISE, which is the Singapore Center for Social Enterprise, and they are the national coordinating body for social enterprise, right? So if you have clear allocation of resources, at least 20%, to solve problems faced by marginalized communities, you can be considered a social enterprise, right? Or for example, you support people who are in need, right? Or people who are at risk. Say, for example, someone who might be in social isolation, or someone who's disabled and has mobility issues. Or it could be a social need or a gap. Say, for example, healthcare, someone who doesn't have access to healthcare, or it could be the environment, right? Maybe you're building something that's a public good. So that's also considered, part of a social enterprise. And then you have something called the Impact Startup, right? And I'm using Impact Collective, which is an accelerator based out of Southeast Asia, as a reference, right? And for them, their definition for impact investing is that there has to be intentionality. Once again, management has to say, yes, we're going to commit. But the interesting thing here is that they looked at regular reporting as well, right? Because if it doesn't get measured, it doesn't get done. So an impact startup, for example, should be regular in how they report the impact that they're creating for their beneficiaries or for their customers. Right, and of course, most of us are familiar with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, right? At least in Southeast Asia, we also have the program by the UNDP that works with our various nations in Southeast Asia to develop the goals in each of these countries. Right, so that brings me to the second part, right, which is Southeast Asia itself. How's the startup ecosystem looking like? What are some of the data for that region? So this is taken from the 2019 report. In 2019, the GDP for Southeast Asia was 3.1 trillion. The population is 653 million people. I think that has gone up by quite a bit right now. Right, the nominal GDP or compound annual growth rate was around 8.6% over a 20-year horizon. So the biggest country in Southeast Asia is Indonesia. And we have something called ASEAN. So that's an acronym for the Association for Southeast Asian Nations. So 10 countries in total. But even within one country like Indonesia, you've got multiple big cities like Jakarta, Surabaya, and Bandung, for example. So, my advice is that when you're looking at Southeast Asia, the first things first is that it's quite fragmented, right? But you can't treat one country on itself. You have to look city by city, right? So even the case of Vietnam, for example, you've got Ho Chi Minh, you've got Hanoi, which is the capital, and both of them are sufficiently large enough, right, for you to think about different go-to-market strategies for each. If you're looking at where Singapore lies in terms of the global startup ecosystem rank, we're typically in the top 15. So in 2019, it's 14. We fluctuate one or two places. But what's interesting to take note of is, I think Singapore has traditionally been looked at as the launching pad for Southeast Asia because there's a lot of venture capital there because it's a financial hub, right? So we've got enough regulations to look at venture capital coming in, foreign domestic investment coming in, as well as going out. So setting up a business is really, really fast. You could do that between 24 hours to 3 days, depending on the type of business that you're doing. But by and large, usually it's within 24 hours you could set up a company in Singapore already, right? If you're talking about startup culture, right, among youths in Southeast Asia, Indonesia is leading the pack. Around 35% of Indonesian youths are interested in entrepreneurship or small business or tech entrepreneurship. And then you've got Thailand next at around 31%. And Singapore, surprisingly, is around 16.9%. So what we've noticed is that there's an inverse relationship between how well the economy is doing and the propensity for someone to start something, right? So if the economy is doing very well, a young student, for example, might get a job offer really quickly, and they might not think about starting a company of their own. On conversely, what we've seen over the whole COVID pandemic over the past 2 years is that a lot more students are building side gigs, whether it's creating an e-commerce store, drop shipping business, it could be setting up a home-based bakery, right? So on and so forth. So when the economy is not doing very well, most students are open to setting up their own small gig or small business, right? And vice versa. The other thing that we've noticed is that the quality of entrepreneurship education has improved, especially in cities which are quite developed, right? So the universities, for example, introduce students to startup concepts. And, a lot of the students feel like, hey, now that I know what tech startups are like and how difficult it is to run one, maybe I don't want to be a co-founder anymore, right? And therefore they decide to join a company as an employee instead. Right, if you're looking at Southeast Asia, where Singapore lies, right, it's usually one or two. But interestingly, you have a lot of our neighbors are catching up, right? Indonesia went up 41 spots. 2019, I think it was number 73. I think it's even higher right now. You can check out the report on the bottom left-hand corner, right? Malaysia, Thailand, very close after Singapore. Right, and then here we've got some interesting statistics from the Asia Partners Internet Report. Number 3 is that they predict 20 plus more billion-dollar tech companies from Southeast Asia by 2029, we've actually hit more than 20 as of last year. I think the number stands at 21 right now. So 21 unicorns just by at the end of last year, right? So the total number of unicorns has actually increased significantly, right, last year. And then their prediction is 70% of these unicorns to be regional platforms, which means they operate in Thailand, Indonesia, Vietnam, and 30% are going to be Indonesia-focused platforms, like for example, Gojek, Tokopedia. Right, Indonesia is a sufficiently large market that it warrants its own go-to-market strategy, and you can build a unicorn just out of Indonesia as well because it's so large. Right. So other fun facts is that if you look at the 16 most populous cities in Southeast Asia, 5 of them are actually in Indonesia, just by population alone. Right. So that's why there's a lot of venture capital moving into Indonesia, because the population size and the growth rate of the middle class is extremely fast. Right, so these are my personal thoughts, right? What are some of the opportunities in Southeast Asia I've noticed over the past 1 to 2 years traveling, prior to traveling around. So some of this have changed, right? I will talk about that slightly later. Right, education and travel, that was a big thing prior to COVID, right? We saw a lot more people traveling in Southeast Asia because of low cost budget, right? Things like distance learning, language learning, whether it's English or whether it's learning another ASEAN language is picking up. Tech offshoring is a very big thing. So a lot of the tech companies could be headquartered in Singapore, but they could offshore that talent. So you could have a developer in Bintan, you could have a developer in Vietnam, so on and so forth. And Indonesia, for example, if not mistaken, is the first country in the world where Apple has set up 3 Apple Developer Academies. No, is it 2? Two. 2 Apple Developer Academies. So you've got one in Jakarta, and you've got another one in Batam, right? So everywhere else is only one Apple Developer Academy, but in Indonesia you've got 2. The other thing that we've noticed, there's a lot more interest in fintech and social networks. So Singapore is trying to position itself as a fintech hub, but you're seeing a lot more cashless payments being pushed out in places like Thailand and Indonesia because of super apps like Grab and Gojek. The third one is e-waste and logistics. So there's very high, what do you call that? Device penetration in Southeast Asia. So a lot of people have multiple mobile devices, and each of all these mobile devices has a lot of rare earth and rare metal. So learning how to recover that is actually a very valuable process. Construction and real estate. Places like Laos, Cambodia, for example, have a quick rising middle class. So you've got to house more people. And of course, because of COVID, we realized that our agriculture systems have to be a bit more robust, right? Because a lot of the countries import and export in Southeast Asia, but now countries are feeling that they need to be a bit more careful in terms of their food security. So there's more investments that are going to agriculture, especially high-tech agriculture and IoT agriculture. So things like remote farms, vertical farms, and farm-to-table tracing of food sources. Right, so these are also, once again, my personal thoughts in terms of KSA's knowledge, skills, and attitudes. I think the first thing that you've got to think about when expanding to Southeast Asia is, you've got to work across different time zones, even within the same country, right? Like in Indonesia, for example, you've got East Indonesian time, West Indonesian time, and you need to learn how to work both in city and virtually. The second thing is about contextualizing. So something that works in Hanoi may not necessarily work in Ho Chi Minh because of different cultural contexts or different working styles, right? And then obviously you've got to be comfortable with changing your own job scope or changing your own career within Southeast Asia as well, because of the various legislation changes between one country to another country. And I think something that the fourth point is something that we tell all our students to be aware of, which is learning to read long form. A lot of the Gen Z students that we work with are very used to TikTok and Instagram and 15-second videos, and getting them to read a book from cover to cover is a challenge, right? So if you're interested in deep tech, if you're interested in reading a lot of the high-tech journals and you want to be in that space, reading long form is going to be very important. Okay, third part, key players in the startup ecosystem. Right, I'm going to share I'm going to start by sharing a bit about what we're starting to see more startup studios. So these are entities or companies that identify a problem and work with the founders over a longer period of time. They might deploy funds as well. But for most people, I think we're very used to the idea of raising a small fund from friends and family first, getting a bigger round from angel investors, applying to an accelerator, Y Combinator or 500 Global, and then raising your seed round with a VC. So traditionally, you go up this staircase, right? But we've also started to see more startup studios coming about where they find a founder and then they work with the founder over a longer period of time. Right. The interesting thing that we noticed about startup studios is that they are efficient in terms of how they test and fail companies. So they fail companies fast, and then when they find product market fit, they scale it up faster as well. And studios are typically operate according to vertical. So you have some studios who are very good in edutech, other studios are very good at agri-tech, and they kind of develop a niche in that particular area before they spin off, additional companies from their portfolio. Right. The other thing that we always see are venture capital firms. So how exactly do venture capital firms work? They typically raise capital for 10 to 13 years, depends on their mandate. Right. They deploy their funds maybe in the first 3 years. They develop the startups over the next 6, and then they harvest the startups in the last 1 year. And then finally, they give a return to the investor. So it's a very, very long time frame, and also a very risky asset class, right? Because of how many startups actually just fail. Right. And then what a typical VC would do is that they raise one fund, they fully deploy it, right? And based on how well they've done, they raise a second or third fund to deploy. Right. And how exactly do VCs make returns? So here's a very quick chart. Say, for example, you've got one startup, right? Startups number 1 to 13 just die, right? And then the outcome for that is that you got $0 out from there. And then you've got startups number 14 to 18 that gives you a one-time return. Say, for example, you give, 1 million to each of these startups, you might get 10 million or 2 million from each of them. So that's 10 million total. And then you will have maybe 1 or 2 startups that give you a 10 times return, right? So startups number 24 and 25, right? So that gives you a return of 80 million. So if you add the outcomes, right, in that column, that gives you around 102 million, right? So in this case, this VC put in 50 million, they got out 132 million. So that's a 2.6 times return. And that's how a VC multiplies the money that's been given to them by their investors. So majority of the startups will die, but you'll have 1 or 2 breakout startups that will pay for everyone else. Right. So in Singapore, right, if you're talking about the enterprise landscape here, right, I think in 2017 we had 1.2 billion in VC deals. I don't have the updated number yet, but if you guys are interested, you can drop me a note and I'll try to find that number for you. But like I mentioned, in Singapore, we're looking at less than 200 staff, less than 100 million in annual group turnover. That's the space that we're looking at for small and medium enterprises. And we have something called JTC Launchpad. So this is the central epicenter where all our startups are. So there are 6 colorful blocks there. So the blue color block is basically my office. I'm at level 4. Not sure whether you can see me. I'm waving right now, right? But we've got 5 other blocks, and in each of these blocks in total, we have around 500 startups, including venture capital firms. So we kind of like engineered the space to put all the startups in one ecosystem, right? Yeah, so 2,000 entrepreneurs across the 6 blocks. And if you are less than 5 years, right, in terms of your company, you get subsidized rental, right? Because rental in Singapore is really expensive. So these are flattened factories that have been repurposed for startup companies. Right, so other players in the space include the Startup SG. So it's an office underneath Enterprise Singapore that gives out grants. So it's a co-funding scheme where you put in some money and then the government will match it. And then in terms of trade associations, we have ACE, which is the Action Committee for Entrepreneurship. So that's the national coordinating body for all the startups in Singapore. Right, you also have SG Innovate, which is another outfit that looks at deep tech. So they work with Entrepreneur First and SMART, which is the Singapore MIT Alliance for Research and Technology. So the Singapore government doesn't try to run these programs, right? But they work with other partners like EF and invite them to operate in Singapore to develop the deep tech in the space. Right, and schools are taking part as well. So this is the National University of Singapore, and they've got a very famous program called the NUS Overseas College, where students intern in an overseas startup for 1 year. And this college program has actually given us quite a number of our unicorns, including Carousel. So that's famously one of the unicorns that have come out from this program. I think we've got PetSnap as well, which is a patent law tech company, and a few others. Right, so the NOC program is already operating in various different cities, Toronto, Silicon Valley, Southeast Asia, Shanghai, so on and so forth. And now this is being rolled out to other universities in Singapore. So 1 year working in a startup overseas, at the same time you take courses in a partner university. Right, so we do have polytechnics as well. So these are, our TVET equivalent, or technical vocational education institutions. Right, even the technical institutions are building incubation centers within the technical college. And you've also have out of campus incubators. So this is called Pollinate, right? So we've got, I think, 5 polytechnics in Singapore. And then after the students graduate from campus, they move here off campus. And then this is RACE, which is what I previously mentioned. So that's the Singapore Center for Social Enterprise. They've got various different grant schemes. And I think this is the one I wanted to share. So for those of you who are interested in social enterprise, you can actually download this from their website. It is a social value toolkit. So this gives you the potential metrics and the vocabulary, to measure, right, the impact that your social enterprise is producing. Right, so we've got co-working spaces, for youths. So subsidized rental again. If you're under 35, you can use the space for subsidized rent. And then, we've also been running startup weekends and various different hackathons. So this was prior to COVID. Now most of our hackathons are done online, and this allows us to bring in friends from around the region to join in. And then we also give out awards. So this NYEA is for students who are not just founders themselves, but ecosystem developers. So some of them could be presidents of the students' clubs, right? And they are also awarded for their contribution to the space. Yeah, even the Ministry for Culture, Community and Youth is also, looking at developing students, not necessarily to be entrepreneurs, but, some of them are interested to run small gigs of their own. The whole point is to help them be gainfully employed and help them with their aspirations. Yeah, so this was the program that I was a part of. We were looking at policy that helped to develop Singaporean youths. Yeah. Okay, 2 last parts before we go into Q&A. One is the trends, right? So I just want to share with you some of the interesting startups, right? So we do see a lot more telemedicine. So this is one of them called Doctor Anywhere. They are operating in Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia, and Philippines, including in addition to Singapore. So, it's not just about going to a doctor, but bringing the doctor either to your home or just talking to the doctor. So telemedicine is something that we've seen has gone up. And then in Malaysia, you've got this other equivalent called BookDoc. So very similar, right? So you notice that, what's been done in Singapore, for example, could also be done elsewhere. And a lot of the companies are now competing, trying to, expand into the geography as fast as they can. We've seen a lot more companies in the mental health space. So this is Intellect. I think they recently raised their Series B, which is around 10 million, I think. I could be wrong, right? But they work with various companies to help these companies, take care of the mental health of their employees, right? And then you've got Naluri, which is a indirect competitor that's based off in Malaysia, also does something similar, but they've targeted a lot of the Malaysian companies first. CXA Group, right? So they were famously one of those that came out in Southeast Asia, right? They do flexible wellness, right? So they give the employees a portal or a marketplace, and the employees can use the company credits to buy whatever they need, whether it's yoga classes or, maybe spectacles. Right, in terms of edutech, this is an interesting one called Marcoding. It's to help disadvantaged youth in high schools, specifically in marginalized areas in Indonesia. So access to tech education or coding education is not equal, right, across Indonesia, because some places are just more developed in terms of high-speed internet, whereas others are not. I think this is one of the things that I wanted to highlight, right? Even within the country, you can't treat every area the same. There are always, different things that you need to take note of in terms of context. You've got InvestEd, which is based out of the Philippines, right? So this is an income share agreement for students. You take a loan, then you go for your school, you go for your undergraduate program, right? And then you pay it back after you're done. So it helps people with social mobility, because previously, if you couldn't afford undergraduate education, you might be priced out of that. But now, you can take a loan and then you can pay it back. So it is a fintech company that looks at education. And then we also have Doyobi. So this is also in edutech. What they do is that it's a train-the-trainer model, right? They give the technology to the schools, and the schools teach the students STEM courses, right? So it's very fun. It's all done online. It's a great way for the students to learn independently as well. Yeah, so this is another company that I've mentored as well. It's called Boomgrow. It is in the agri-tech space, so it's a complete vertical farm. They have a very interesting system called the plant and forget system. There is no water at all in this entire vertical farm. So all the nutrients and all the moisture are in a black box. You put a black box underneath your UV light, and the plants grow, right? So no water system at all, and because there's no water, it's actually easier to maintain. Once you're done harvesting it, you send the cartridges back to them, they replace it with more seeds, and you can grow the next batch. Right now, Tiny Hub, this is based out of Indonesia. So, it's a platform for farmers to buy and sell, suppliers, as well as distributors. So a more efficient way. And then it's also a way for farmers to communicate with each other and find out what's happening within their space. Thailand is also very big on alternative meats and alternative protein. So I think, if you've got, I think at least 8 companies that are looking at that right now. And, they're a huge exporter of poultry as well as meat, right? So they're trying to become even more sustainable. So this is interesting for Thailand. And then, this is one of my favorite restaurants in Ho Chi Minh. It's called Blanc, right? So it's a social enterprise where you've got a sign for your food, right? So if you want to if you sign it wrongly, right, you're going to get the wrong food that's going to be delivered to you. But we're starting to see very interesting applications of social enterprises in Southeast Asia. This is one of my favorite places. Right, and then the last part I want to share is about the fundraising trends. So this is an article that you can go and search on Tech in Asia. It's one of my favorite websites. They aggregate anything that's interesting coming out of Southeast Asia. And here I just wanted to share with you, if anyone wants to make a guess, if you know who are the most well-funded tech startups in Asia and the Pacific. So I'm going to give you maybe 10 to 15 seconds if anyone wants to make a guess for any of these countries before I reveal the answers. Yeah, we can start off with the more exciting ones, like maybe Indonesia or Malaysia.
10 most funded startups, yeah?
Yeah. Most well-funded in each of these countries, if anyone knows.
Alibaba.
Okay, so Alibaba is in Greater China area. This is Southeast Asia.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Actually, China is there. Yeah. So let's see whether Alibaba
So
is the right
yeah,
one.
so I
Yeah.
I saw China, like, so
Okay.
I'm correct. Startups. Jesus, I just realized I really know very little about Southeast Asia.
It's okay, no worries. Let's see whether our audience members want to make a guess.
Anyone? You have like 5 seconds to go to Google.
Okay, I'm gonna reveal the answers.
Right, cool.
All right, so here we are. Right, in Malaysia, we've got something called iFlix, which is kind of like a localized version of Netflix.
Yeah, we have
China-
iFlix here in Nigeria.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. So they're Malaysian.
There's a partnership between them and one of our telecoms companies. Globe, I think.
Got it. Yeah.
Right?
So
Yeah.
Vietnam is Momo. That's fintech, right? And then Flash Express, which is Thailand. That's in logistics. You've got Gojek, which is peer to, consumer to consumer logistics, right? Which is kind of like the Uber equivalent, but for Indonesia. And of course, you've got Grab, which recently did their spec. So let me just zoom in for you, to have a look at this. So the ones with the unicorn icon beside, those are unicorns already. Then in Sri Lanka, you've got ODoc, which is very similar to that Dr. Anywhere one, which I was sharing with you about. Fincy, that's fintech. And then in Bangladesh, it's ShopUp, which is e-commerce. And then in Hong Kong, it's Lalamove, so that's also logistics. Right? So interesting space, Southeast Asia. And who knew that iFlix was the most well-funded startup in Malaysia? All right, so just want to share with you other things about the legislation. Like in Singapore, for example, there's this scheme called the Angel Investors Tax Deduction Scheme. So if you invest a certain amount in Singapore, you can actually get tax deductions. And that's one way that they're trying to attract foreign domestic investment into Singapore. Right, one last thing to share. This is something called Map of the Money. So you can go on their website. It may or may not be updated, but if you want to find the investors and what range they invest in, this is a good resource.
Okay.
Yeah, so just last part about us, what exactly does Reactor Ventures do? We invest in student entrepreneurs. We do this across 3 verticals. The first vertical that we specialize is in edutech, right? So if you're building an edutech business and you want to expand to Southeast Asia, we can definitely help with this because we work with 200 schools. The second vertical is in Gen Z consumer. So every year we train around 10,000 students all over Southeast Asia, and we can help with distribution, right? So Kura, for example, it's in the mental health space, but specifically for students, right? So they sell to schools. And then the last one is sustainability, right? So one of our portfolio companies, the Ultimate Nutrition, the one in the center, it's a protein bars made from cricket flour, right? And yeah, it's delicious. They've got 5 different flavors right now. You can't even tell that you're eating crickets because it's all ground into a powder. But it's a more sustainable form of protein as compared to say, farming, etc. Yeah, so that's me, right? If you want to reach out to me, feel free to let me know. Rusydi at Reactor.school. I will be handing over the slides to the organizers, but if you want it faster, you can always just scan the QR code. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Wow, I can't. 15 minutes just flew by. I was not even. Can't believe it went that well. So, just one question, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So, what exactly is your goal in Nigeria? Like, what exactly are you trying to achieve by um, speaking on this platform? By trying to, and I'm the reason why I'm asking this is because I'm thinking that for apart from those that are already here, Techbiz Center to like support you in achieving your goals, and I'm trying to see how we can collaborate and see how we can be able to move forward. So I'm getting the vibe that you're looking for a lot of partnerships and collaborations with Nigerian startups here. So I'm
That's
trying to
right.
understand also what exactly in like numbers, what exactly is your goal here, like trying to
Yeah,
achieve.
that's a great question. Thanks so much, Edwin. I think there are 2 things. One is that we want to reach out to the universities in the West African region, right? And then partner these universities to run our programs there. So, to benefit more students in the West African region. I think the second thing is that we want to be the bridge between Africa and Southeast Asia, right? We have a lot of students from Southeast Asia that want to partner with startups in the African region. And I think vice versa. I've heard that a lot of companies in Africa, they're looking at Southeast Asia to expand to next. Yeah, so that's
Okay.
what we want to do. We want to bridge that.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
So opening the floor now to anyone who has a question. So if you have a question, you can just raise your hand or you can just type it in the chat box. And then if you're on any social media handles, you're watching streaming live, and this is the reason why. So a lot of people don't. A lot of people actually go back. They don't attend. They now go and download the video and watch the video at their own convenience. So I'm really feeling very sorry for them at the moment. Anyways, so if you have a question, please just send it in. We'll read it out here. Please, anyone? No
Oh,
one?
you can share with me about your business as well. If let's say there's anything that
Oh
you
yes. So
yeah.
oh yeah. So this is what we're going to do. Okay. So someone's asking if you can be trained by Reactor School.
Sure. Yeah. So drop me an email. What we'll do is that we'll reach out to your school and convince your school to run our program so that you don't have to pay for it. So that's what we do, right? If you're a student, sometimes it's really hard to pay. So we convince the
Okay.
schools. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is what we're going to do. Yeah. So I'm declaring that we're in partnership now. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to do a post. We'll do something the communication on our social media handles and even our tech base. Because I'm sure a lot of people that we would love to meet are not probably are not live, are not in this place, or are not watching. Like they probably do go because we do have most of our viewers go after the event and just download the video and watch it. So what we're going to do is that we're going to do a post, a collaboration between 2 of us. We're going to help you to collate people's requests from
Sure.
Southeast Asia and forward them to you. Then let's see how we can be able to get these conversations going. Right? Does that make sense to you?
That makes perfect sense. Thank you so
So
much.
just
Yeah.
yeah, one thing. One thing. How is the export appetite for export there? Because a lot of things, a lot of people here in Nigeria, they really look at want to export agricultural produce and stuff like that, but Is this something that you can give an insight to, or because obstacles are a big problem? Finding one of the challenges of exporting anything here is that okay, when you get there, who do you sell it to? Who do you sell it to? Right. So is this something that you can help to create?
Got it. Yeah. So if you're looking to export to Singapore, right, you will need to get, if it's a food product, for example, you need to get license from SFA, the Singapore Food Agency, right? So different products have different government agencies that will decide whether to allow it in or not, right? The good thing is that if you are one of the Commonwealth countries, for example, there are double tax deduction schemes. So you don't have to pay tax twice, right? Because it's
Okay.
reciprocal tax. So you need to check, right, country to country, what exactly you're importing into Singapore and whether there are specific agencies that regulate it, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're talking about digital services, right, we actually started putting a goods and service tax on digital services as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a
Mm-hmm.
very recent thing. If you're talking about food, with Singapore Food Agency. If you're talking about clothes, you have the Textile Federation of Singapore. The website to go to is Enterprise Singapore. Yeah, so you can just search Enterprise Singapore. They are the coordinating agency, and from there you can look at all the various policies for each of the different classification of items, right? Whether it's
Okay.
furniture, printing, food. Enterprise Singapore is that one website for you to look at.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. Just looking at, is there no more questions? Nobody has any other questions again? Okay. So, like I said, we'll do a post or we collate people's requests and questions and we'll pass them on to you. Then we can see how we can facilitate this. It's a collaboration between Reactor School and Economics. We can definitely put that together. It's been really nice
Absolutely.
having you here, Rusydi.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
I really, really enjoyed this session, and I can't wait to. I'm sure, like I said, we should have conversations afterwards. I'm sure we can collaborate and a lot of things that we can, do together. So, on that note, thank you very much. Please send. You have our email, so send your presentation. I'm sure we'll make it available on our website. You can download it for free, and even though it's so much information, it's really paining me that I'm doing it for free, but it's fine. Um, so we'll put it for free. We'll give everybody for free. Those who got anytime to go to the site and download it and just look at what's going on. And for everyone else, it's been nice having you. Some people are still sending messages. Oh, there's some questions and some Q and some people are sending in the Q and A. Let me see if I can take one.
Sure. Yeah.
What question is one? How do I plan? Okay, so someone is asking, saying he has a person for social enterprise, but how do he plan? How does he plan?
Sure. That's a great question. Thanks so much, John. So in the case of Singapore, when we say plan, right, it means that if let's say you're gonna reach out to 5 clients, 4 clients are maybe commercial clients, and then that one client could be a client that's a social sector company, right? Maybe it's a old folks home, maybe it's a entity that serves disadvantaged or underprivileged people, right? That is being deliberate. So 20% of your time, 20% of your profits, 20% of your resource goes into helping underprivileged groups. That's what Raise is trying to do, right? So it's an 80-20, 80% fully commercial, you charge your commercial rates, but 20% maybe you give a discount or you do it pro bono, for example. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right.
See, one more. Is there a question again? Okay. Okay. So people from LinkedIn, I said thank you for the session. People that are viewing from LinkedIn are thanking you.
Thank you,
So
Alimi. Yeah.
every all the platforms you see us, we have a post for you very soon to collaborate. So maybe if you have maybe your questions are not in your mind, that can go home and think about it and get back to us, and we'll definitely pass the questions back to you. Rushdi. So thank you so much for everyone. To everyone, it's been a wonderful session, and we're looking forward to having you again next week where we have another speaker, and I'm sure it will be another great time when we get to hear people who have gone far in our space to exchange knowledge and experiences, and in this case, really create definite impact. So we are very glad to have you, and we hope to see you soon. So have a great night, have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you soon.
Take care,
Take care,
everyone.
Richard.
Bye bye.